Good morning, everybody. Andy Armstrong here, and we're very, very glad to have you this morning. We are going to be going through some government affairs updates. We are recording this, so if for some reason that's a problem for you, we'd ask you to leave now, but we do want to record this so we can share it with all of our customers who aren't able to make it this morning. We want to make sure this information is out there because there's a whole lot of change going on. A little bit about me. I am relatively new to Republic, been here about 6 months. If I haven't met you yet, I look forward to doing so soon. I am over 35 years in the industry, so have been with multiple companies and about half distribution, half manufacturing, but I've been with JCI for a long time and Fujitsu and a few others. So anyway, we'll get started. We will be taking questions via chat for now. So if you have a question as we go, put it into chat. At the end, we'll be opening up the mics and be handling questions at that time as well. So, but for right now, if you put them in the chat, we'll try to respond to them as we go. All right, with that being said, we are going to cover a couple things today. The first thing is just talk a little bit about where we are. In the 35 years I've been doing this, I have never seen a time with more change happening, and they're challenging and they're going to be hard for all of us. So working together is more important than ever. So good partners in the channel, be it manufacturers, distributors, or contractors, are crucial at this time. And we want to be a good partner and help you solve as many of these problems as we can and capitalize on them. We'll go through the utility rebates briefly. Most of you are aware of those and are working through them. But we will talk briefly about those. I do want to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and talk about what it means and what it doesn't mean. There's a whole lot of stuff out there, and like most things these days, you can believe about a third of it. It's just figuring out which third to believe. So we're working on that. We'll share what we know, and also share what we don't, which there's still some questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about low GWP refrigerants. That's still in flux with the A2Ls, but we want to tell you what we do know and what it looks like today, just so you're prepared and can start making your plans for 2024 accordingly, because it will greatly affect 2024, even though the A2Ls aren't required until 2025, but more to come on that. So we talk about unprecedented times. And I want to remind everybody that big change equals big opportunities. It just requires a little strategy, a little planning, a little patience to make it work out. First thing I want to remind everybody is in 2022, we had the biggest year ever for condenser shipping in the United States. We had over 9 million heat pumps and AC units shipped, residential. And that's an all-time high, so business is good. In the midst of that, we had our new SEER 2 and HSPF 2 ratings. And just as a reminder, we're not going to go into this in detail, but what we're really doing with SEER 2 and HPSF 2 is we're changing the way we rate to base that on true efficiency of blowers. Our old rating of SEER and HPSF was simply based on having the right, a very small amount of static. So adjusting for that has pulled down our efficiency a little and made it a little higher to get those ratings we need, and made life a lot more complicated. We get that, but we're dealing with that. I think all of us are working through it. The SEER 1 stuff is nearing its end, but there's still a few things out there. So always good to be aware of the differences. Right now, there's unprecedented rebates and tax credits available. There's federal, state, utility, and manufacturers rebates all over the place. We've got tax credits on top of that. And I say this tongue in cheek, but it's almost enough money to justify the complexity, because when you start adding it up, there's thousands and thousands of dollars available, but it does create a lot more work, and keeping on top of it is not easy. So we want to help any way we can with that. Finally, the new A2L refrigerants are coming, and although the refrigerant itself isn't going to be too difficult, the requirements it puts on installation, the requirement it puts on changing from one to the other, and the timing of all those are quite complex. So we want to go through what we know today, and we'll keep updating you every month as we learn more, because it's not done yet. There's more information to come. Finally, just a reminder, we're not done with strategic electrification. There's going to be continued pressure on carbon-based fuels, which will require we take a closer and closer look all the time at heat pumps, mini splits, solutions that take gas out of homes. We're a little slow to adopt in this part of the country, which is good, and we can enjoy that, but it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it doesn't mean that it won't continue to be pushed from different government entities and utilities to get us down that path. So be aware of it. Don't need to change things immediately, but it is something that's a force in the business that we just simply can't ignore. All right, on the rebates, we've got the Mid-American and Alliant up here. A quick glance, you can see you can easily get near $1,000 back on an AC unit and a high efficiency furnace. They're certainly a challenge to make those happen. We're doing all we can. Patrice is working very hard to make sure those rebates are processed midstream, meaning that rebate happens when you buy from us. So we work for you on that. If you're in that Mid-American Alliant territory, we're certainly happy to help any way we can. Ameren, same story. Rebates up near, you can see there it's $1,000 on a 16 SEER 2 heat pump, and you look at the 95 plus furnace is $250. So there's another $1,250 to help offset the cost of high efficiency equipment. So good things to keep in mind and build into your plan on how you're going to market. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act, and I know in some circles that's a bad word, and I get it. It's a frustrating program because there's a lot to it, and it's hard to understand. I believe the initial version was around 800 pages, and I read several of those. And if you are having a trouble sleeping at night, it's a good thing to read, I can promise you. But the important stuff to take out of it for us: the high efficiency electric home rebate program, the 25C tax credits, and the homes rebate program. There's a lot more in there that can affect us, but in reality, those three are the ones that are going to be most prevalent for us in this channel. So I want to talk about those briefly here and make sure you're up to speed on what they mean in your market. So there was an old 25C tax program, and it was based on Energy Star. So anything in 2022 used Energy Star as a rating, and you could use 10% of the cost of your entire system up to 300 for AC and heat pumps and 450 for furnaces. It had a lifetime limit. So not big dollars, hardly worth the effort to do the paperwork on those rebates. 25C for this year changes dramatically because of the Inflation Reduction Act. That is the law that changed how 25C is being handled now. Now, for starters, it's not using Energy Star anymore. It's using CEE, which is the Consortium for Energy Efficiency. Different rating system. That's a collection of all the utilities who got together and decided what ratings they wanted. When they chose that, they forgot to tell the manufacturers, and it made it very hard for all the manufacturers to meet their ratings because they weren't really paying attention to what was being built in the industry. They just chose some numbers randomly. So that's what made getting to some of these numbers hard for all manufacturers. And we have been working hard to make sure we have products that will fit this for you. But those dollars for heat pumps, up to $2,000 for a heat pump based on 30% of the cost of the system. I'll walk through how that works on the tax forms in a minute. Not to teach you to be tax accountants, but just so you understand how it flows. Up to $600 on high efficiency AC or high efficiency furnace. We'll talk more about those. There are no annual limits, or there's annual limits, but there's no lifetime limit on this. So you can use it every year if you choose to. So if you have customers who have multiple systems in their home and they want to do one this year and one next, they can get up to $2,000 on each system if they do it in 2 separate years. Getting to be more clear on how the claims work, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The high efficiency electric homes rebate program. It's a little bit more complex, but it's up to $8,000 on a new heat pump system. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to talk about number 4 here, the rebate program on energy savings for the whole home. Basically, the way the program works, if you're able to save up to 20 to 35%, you can get up to $2,000 divided by 50% of the project cost. So it does some math, gets you some savings based on your projected rebates. If it's over 35% savings, you can get even double that. The challenge is nobody's really sure how that modeling is working yet. So although it's a nice program and it makes sense, nobody's sure what's being approved to use. So second part of this program, both rebates are managed by the states. The state energy offices will be who chooses how to use this program. The state of Iowa has already decided they will not take part in these rebates. Illinois and Wisconsin still are planning to. So I want to talk a little bit more about the number 3 rebate, the homes program, and explain to you how that works. So sorry about that, went the wrong one, too many slides there. It's based on AMI, which is average median income. So that means that of all the household incomes in the state of Illinois, for example, if you go to that middle one, that middle person and all the household incomes, the household income is $50,965. That's the median income for homeowners in Illinois. If you do 80% of that, that's a household income of $40,000. So that means approximately 40% of homeowners in Illinois are going to have this income level if you work the math out, or less. They are eligible to $8,000 rebate on their new system at 100% funding. If you do the 150 of average median income, that means incomes of 76,000 or less are eligible for 50% rating of that $8,000. So that means they'd have to spend $16,000 to get that $8,000 back. Now they can get up to $14,000 total because other things besides heat pumps are included. You can do new power service, you can do a new panel, you can do a gas dryer heat pump, you can do a hot water heat pump. Lots of options of things you can do to keep working towards that 14,000, but that is your max limit per year on this rebate program. And it's all based on this average median income. The downside is the state of Illinois and the state of Wisconsin have yet to explain exactly how they're going to execute this. We still think it's coming. Illinois says they're doing it. We just don't have the details yet. So stay tuned and we'll keep you posted. Want to talk a little bit about the 25C tiers. This is the Consortium for Energy Efficiency I've been talking about, the CEE. And if you'll notice in green, we have the Energy Star, which was the old program. In red, we have the new 25C CCE or CEE ratings. So on air conditioners, it bumps up a little bit. We're going now to a 16 SEER 2 and 12 EER 2 to meet that standard. If you're looking at heat pumps, we're moving to 15.2 SEER 2 and HSPF of 8.1. We've got a lot of combinations that get us there and more coming in 2024. So hang on tight for that. The other one I wanted to make sure we talked about was the furnaces. The rating for AFU for furnaces for this rebate, and that's $600 on furnaces, is 97%. The good news is we have a brand new furnace coming out this winter that's just a simple 2-stage furnace that meets that 97%. So we're going to have a really good product that fits in there. And if you think about the difference between single stage and 2-stage going to a homeowner, that $600 pretty much covers the difference. So you can give homeowners a more comfortable furnace and offer this 25C tax credit. So let's talk a little bit about this tax credit and how it really works, because I've heard on the street about 5,000 explanations, and I thought it was important to talk about how it really works. And that being said, our disclaimer language, I'm not a tax professional, and you shouldn't listen to what I say to do your own taxes or any for your customers. We should always guide our customers to tax professionals. But that being said, I still think it's important to understand how the forms work and how this math works because of all the misinformation out there. So walking through that, the first form you need to know about is the 5695, and this is the residential energy credit form. And if you look at what I have circled here, It is asking you to put in the electric or natural gas heat pump, what you spent on that system, what it cost you. So what was on the invoice from you as contractors to your homeowner goes in that line 29A. You multiply all of that by 30% to get that 30% amount. So if you did a $10,000 system, $3,000 would go in this line, but it can't be more than 2,000. So 2,000 would be what you enter there. And then that drops down into 29E, which when we add all these credits up from any other energy sources, it goes to Schedule 3. And again, I'm just showing this so you understand how it flows on the tax system. So on line B, 5B, you enter what we just calculated, put in our $2,000 here, add all these up to get to line 15, and then this goes on to your 1040 form. And remember, line 31 is where we're putting it, right? So I'll show you that form. On line 31, you can see it's the amount from Schedule 3 we just looked at. So you'd put your $2,000 right in here. All right, to kind of show you the math and how it works, I went in and found out what's the median household income across the 3 states. And Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin work out to be these levels for median household income. And that, if we put in, just using the Iowa as an example, that's our total taxable amount. I also researched the average amount of tax paid by someone in Iowa. And in Iowa, that amount, the tax due, or what we call tax liability, is $4,332. In this scenario, what I'm saying for withholding is that this person chose to have money withheld from their check, and that amount was $4,000. So that's a pretty normal tax scenario where we had money withheld. So we owe $4,332. We had $4,000 withheld. So we would owe $332 in this scenario. But if we got our tax credit, we put that in here. And the way the math works, you total up all these credits you can get, and then you add them to your withholding. So in essence, what we're saying is this 2,000 plus this 4,000, 2,000 in our tax credit from our heat pump and 4,000 in our withholding. We add those together. So it's as if we paid $6,000. Then we calculate, we paid 6,000, our tax liability was 4332, so we would end up getting a refund back of $1,668. It's the way the math works. Now, when you, and I'll show you a quick summary here. So tax liability is 4332, withholding is 4,000, our tax credit is 2,000, net tax refund is 1,668, and if we didn't have that tax credit from our new heat pump, we would owe 332. Now, tax professionals will say this is different for everyone, and it is, because there could be other tax credits in here. They could have a child tax credit, they could have a caring for elderly tax credit, they could have multiple other tax credits. So the math could work out differently. But you can see that there's still a lot of tax liability on the average household income in Iowa for us to get money back for a 25C tax credit. So steps I would recommend that you take at this stage. First of all, I'd recommend you at least offer 25C eligible systems, and that's 15.2 SEER2 heat pumps, 16.0 SEER2 AC units, and 97% efficient furnaces. Would explain to the system that these systems will reduce taxes if you pay taxes. And again, make sure they understand the difference between liability and what they're being refunded, because some people get very confused over that withholding and think that their bottom line on taxes is what they actually pay, but it's that liability number higher up on the page that is really important. And again, remind people that only a tax professional can help them know for sure what their tax credit would be. And I recommend that you have a card of some local tax person in your area to give to customers. If they don't have a tax person, find somebody who's willing to take those phone calls and take that new business as an account. And finally, be sure that your 25C, AFUE, SEER2, and HPSF ratings are and AHRI numbers are on your on your form or on your invoices to make claiming very easy. All right, so we'll dive into questions on that. I don't see any in the chat, so I think we're good there for now, but we will dive in at the end if you have any questions on the 25C tax credit. A2Ls, not all clear yet, for sure. So let's do a little history lesson very quickly. Back in 1987, the Montreal Protocol came out, and that's when we realized that CFCs and HCFCs were depleting the ozone layer. So ozone depletion potential is what ODP stands for. R12 was the worst offender. R22 was still pretty bad, so we had to get rid of both of those, and we did. We brought in 410A because it had a 0 ODP. And then we got to Kigali, and Kigali was ratified by all the countries involved back in 2016. Our Senate approved it in 2022, which has caused the changes we're seeing now. This is phase down of HFCs, and HFCs cause a little bit more global warming potential. So we went from 410A, which was good on ODP, but you can see it has a very high global warming potential number of 2088. The new standard is to be below 750 on January 1st. So you can see that 410A was a big offender, and essentially it's that 125 component, which kept this refrigerant from being flammable. What we're going to, the 454B and the 32, have the lower GWP numbers, but they do move us over into the slightly flammable range. So that's the difference. Most manufacturers are going with 454B because of this 466 number. In 2029, we will need to be under 500 in global warming potential. So 454 allows us to keep using the same refrigerant after 2029. A few manufacturers are using R32, and you can see that it won't meet that 500 GWP criteria. So that's why most manufacturers have gone ahead and moved to 454B. Okay. Let's move on to the A2Ls. They are non-toxic. They have lower GWP than most what we're using today, and they have low flammability compared to the A2s and A3s. So here's our chart. And if you go up the chart, we have more flammability. If you go across the chart, we have more toxicity. So for example, a B2L you might have heard of is ammonia. So higher toxicity, but also flammable. What we're going to be working with 454B is an A2L, so low flammability and low toxicity. But let's talk about that flammability. The test we do for flammability with refrigerants is we put it in a beaker. We have a stirring device to keep all the fluids, the gas fluids, all mixed up in there. And then we spark right here on the electrodes. When we spark, we measure that flame and how far it goes. To be a class 1, you have to be under this 90-degree radius. And this is where our current refrigerants fit, is in that class 1 level. Class 2L, you can see what 410A looks like when it ignites. So it's only slightly more flammable than what we're already working with. It won't light with cigarettes. It won't light with toasters. It's not going to light with static electricity. It's very difficult to light in some ways, but that doesn't mean it's not flammable. Down below here, you can see what happens when we take a class 3 refrigerant. It's a whole different experience. So not to say we don't need to be careful, but when we talk about flammability, it's not quite as aggressive as what we might have heard in the past. So actions you need to think about, and what we're dealing with now, the A1s versus the A2Ls, what's the difference? Safely remove refrigerant following the national and local regulations required. No change there. Purge the circuit with inert gas. Today, it's a best practice. In the future, it's required. You're going to have to do that with these A2Ls. It creates too much risk if we don't. Evacuate the circuit. Again, best practice with the old refrigerants, absolutely required with the new ones. Opening the circuit, making repairs doesn't change, but leak and pressure test. Again, best practice. Most of you do that already, but if you don't, it's going to be required going forward with the new systems. Evacuating the system, required, just like before. Charging the system, required just like before. So not a lot of differences, but we just need to be a little bit more diligent. How about your tools? Recovery cylinders, left-handed thread, so we're going to be going the other direction. So some changes there. Vacuum pumps, check with your manufacturer and who you like. A lot of people are recommending that this power switch needs to be located away from the work zone. So if you do have a leak, we don't get a spark causing a problem. Recovery machines, gas detectors, and electronic gas detectors all need to go to 2L compatible because it's a different refrigerant, therefore a different testing model and different needs on the recovery. Scales, no changes, of course. Ventilation fans, going to be pretty much the same, but there may be a couple of differences to be spark proof. Electric hand tools, really prefer non-sparking. If you think about your drills, things like that. So be looking for those as you replace drills over the next year. And then dry chemical CO2 fire extinguisher need to be chemically compatible. So make sure you're adding that to your mix of tools on the truck. All right, couple other things on A2Ls and then we'll be wrapped up for questions. First thing we want to talk about is bulk phase down. And this is what makes 2024 so very challenging. If you look at the chart closely, you can see we had a 10% reduction 2 years ago in 2021. Excuse me, 2021, end of 2021. This year, January 1, we have a 40% or 30% reduction in production of 410A. So that means we had 10 here, we have another 30 here. So there'll be 40% less than there was back in 2020, 2021. What does that mean? That means that all manufacturers aren't going to have enough virgin refrigerant to put into equipment. So they're going to start using, all manufacturers are going to start using recycled refrigerant in new production. And I think everybody understands what that means for the price of refrigerant for service and replacement. We expect to see a very large spike in the price of that refrigerant. So we need to plan for that, need to understand that, need to weigh that into our decisions on when we're going to transition to new 454B equipment. So for example, I've noted here that JCI will start shipping York and Luxair equipment early in 2024. We're expecting the first shipments early in the second quarter. And we're getting more information on that every day. So we'll keep you posted there. But making the choice to go to a 454B refrigerant now is going to save your customers some future very high expenses on 410A. Because again, one of the challenges with 410A is we don't have drop-in refrigerants and don't expect to. So that creates some other challenges as a service business. Technology transitions. This gets a little bit sticky too. Most all of the stuff that we sell in terms of residential and light commercial has a date of 1/1/25 for manufacturing. So the manufacturers like JCI won't be able to make that equipment after January 1st of 2025. So a little over 14 months away, or a little under 14 months away now. Planning for that is always a challenge. What we initially had heard was that, and what the proposal was, is there'd be 1 year to sell through all that equipment. So we'd have all of 2025 to sell through the equipment. That is not the case anymore. That is changed, and we're going to talk about that in a minute and explain what that means. Just for reference sake, chillers are the same date. VRF, because of the complexity of piping, there's been an extra year added there. So VRF with true VRF, not mini splits, just VRF is 2026. Refrigerant management, recovery, reclaim, licensing mandates, all updated. So you're going to have new rules on how you collect and recycle refrigerant with the A2Ls. And certainly we need all the 410A back we can get because we're using it in new manufacturing. So keep recycling your refrigerant with us here at Republic. We need it. All right, so let's talk about the transition and the news that just happened last week. I'll start with commercial and residential package units. So if a 410A unit is made before January 1st, 2025, we have 3 years to sell that to you. You can install it, not a problem at all good. If we're talking about a system, and by system we mean an outdoor unit and a coil or an air handler, that system cannot be installed after January 1st, 2025. Now, the questions become, how is that going to be policed? We don't know. Are there going to be exceptions? We don't know. We're still learning. But right now, you would not be allowed by law to install a 410A system after January 1st, 2025. So that creates a challenge for us because we have to be rid of all our 410A units by the end of next year, and that timing is going to be difficult for us and manufacturers. So we need to think about that means, and we'll continue to go from there. The full system install for VRF is just after January 1st, 2026. Install and manufacturing holds true for that. But there's this little part of it that makes it confusing, and that's the components. You will be able to get components to fix a residential system for the rest of time, as long as they're available. And you can install a compressor, or you could go and install a whole new condenser, or you could install a whole new coil, but you can't do the combination. So you couldn't do a coil and a condenser, heat pump, AC unit at the same time. Again, how that's going to be policed, we don't know. Can you go today and install a condenser and tomorrow install a coil? Perhaps. We just don't know the rules yet. So it's going to be confusing, and that's why we say, let's keep doing this meeting. Let's keep updating you with what we have, keep putting more information out there, answer your questions as best we can, and keep the story going, because it's a complicated time, and we just don't want to leave you hanging. We want to be a good partner and make sure you know what's going on and what the pieces look like. One of the things we'll be sending out to everybody who attended this session is a flyer that walks through the tax credits. The products are eligible. There will be a York and Luxair version of this, so you can see what systems get what rebates. Then we have a whole collection of IRA resources, different places you can go to find the information I just shared with you. So this will be a PDF, so you can click right through, find that information. Thanks to Bella on our team for putting this together. It's a great resource to find a ton of information, including a couple of videos we put together that explain these two programs, basic how a heat pump works to share with your customers, and then the Inflation Reduction Act to explain how the Inflation Reduction Act was intended to help get more efficient equipment onto the street. So with that, I think the last item I had was our next meeting. We're going to do this again on December 6th. And we expect to have new information. We'll probably cover some of the same information because it's confusing, and we want to make sure we get it out there. But if you have other topics you'd like us to cover, or other questions we should dive deeper into, please let us know. But with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. Have we had any on the chat? I don't think we have, but we can also open up the mics and unmute yourself, and we'll be more than happy to chat with you. Looks like we did pretty well, Laura. Nobody's got any questions. All right, looks like there's. All right. Yeah, Laura asked a good question. If you're still on and listening, let us know what timing works best for you. If this 8 o'clock hour is great, we'll keep doing it then. But if you'd like us to shift it, make it more functional for you, please let us know. Type into the chat or send me or Laura an email or tell your TM. We're more than happy to shift this and make this time better for you guys if 8 o'clock is not a good time. All right, seeing no other questions, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We will have this recording out as well as the documents that Bella created.